About a week and a half ago, the two of you, along with everyone's favorite Matt Dillahunty, appeared on Mr. Atheist's show, and you played a game of word salad or actual Jordan Peterson quote.
Which is not a true dichotomy.
No, but it was fun. It was fun. We had fun during that show.
Yeah.
So, I love the idea, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Jordan Peterson is above criticism and correct about everything.
That's good. It's a good start.
However, I also watched quite a few of his lectures, and I do feel like some of the criticism that was leveled at him
by me
during
probably
that show was a little unfair. So as a sort of bridge building exercise, I guess I would like to maybe explain the context for some of those quotes, because that's very important for a lot of them.
Yeah, just to be clear, do you remember specifically what criticism it is you are would like to respond to as unfair?
I have a number of quotes here, yes, specific quotes that I'd like to address.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and just to explain a bit, the reason is because it's very easy to sort of quote mine Jordan Peterson for word salad, because what he does is he starts off with like a bit of legitimate research or fact, and then starts to elaborate on that and abstract up and start using metaphors. And in the end, after about, 10, 20 minutes, he'll try to boil it all down to a soundbite, but that soundbite is so loaded with meaning from the previous 10, 20 minutes by that point that, taken out of context, it basically is word salad. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to defend him for that, it's just something he does. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the argument that led up to the quote is still, if not correct, at least interesting and good for discussion.
Yeah.
It's always fun to find a way of disentangling and finding the meaning and trying to find some way of making things that are abstract to the point of nonsense meaningful. He speaks the way that he thinks, I think, is the most simple conclusion, and his thinking is so muddied and foolish that it should be treated the way that it is, as foolish mud, would be my conclusion. However, yeah, let's see what you're...
Sorry, you were going to say something, go ahead.
I was coming to an end. Also, if anyone's going to complain about being interrupted, it should not be me, just based on Eric.
Hi.
Hey.
So what I was going to say, I can wait until you make your point, Chase, if you want to.
Okay, so I thought I'd start with the big one and go straight to metaphysical substrate. Mm-hmm. That's okay. So the interesting thing about that, the other day I went back and listened to the conversation between Peterson and Matt Dillahunty, and actually the first couple of times he doesn't say metaphysical substrate, he says metaphorical substrate. And that's another thing about Jordan Peterson, I feel, is although he speaks with a lot of emphasis, and he really likes to stress individual words, his word choice is a little clumsy at times. And you can see that when he sort of goes back and forth between metaphorical and metaphysical, which are actually very different things. Mm-hmm. But just to try to quickly go through it. So the metaphorical substrate, what that is, or rather what he means by it, it starts off with...
I'll let you believe that he means by it.
Yes, I guess. But no, so this is the argument that he presents at more length during his lectures, as far as I can tell. So about 50, 60 years ago, there was a fellow called Jean Piaget, and he was a developmental psychologist, I believe. So he studied children and how they learn things. And one of the observations that he made was that young children, say 6 years old, you can watch them play together, like play marbles together. But if you take one of the children out of the group and ask him about what the rules are of the game that he's playing, he cannot articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he can obviously follow the rules, he can't explain to you what they are.
Sure.
And this is, by the way, this generalizes up into adult life with things like tacit knowledge.
Sorry,
so-
this generalizes up to adults with things like what knowledge?
Tacit knowledge.
I don't know that word.
Yeah, I'm
So-
not sure what word you're saying.
Tacit. T-A-C-I-T.
Oh, tacit.
Tacit.
Okay,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as a quick example, one of the first things that AI researchers tried to do was build expert systems for things like medical diagnosis. And the way they would do that is they would find a doctor, an expert, and ask him to explain how he diagnoses people.
Yeah.
And the experts couldn't actually come up with a consistent set of rules that the AI researchers could then go and implement.
Yeah.
So what
There is a difference there.
yes,
Yeah. There's a difference between pattern recognition and not understanding what your subconscious is doing and being able to follow a set of social norms without being able to actually articulate them in the form of written rules.
yeah, okay,
Because
but,
one of those two things can be observed and written in the form of rules. And the other is the ability of an expert to recognize patterns in what they observe in a non-human thing. And the other is patterns that emerge and are understood tacitly or implicitly in human systems. So to compare recognizing things in something other than a human system to recognizing patterns in a human system is, just to throw the difference in there as we continue.
okay, no, I appreciate that. I
Mhm.
don't think the difference is relevant to this point.
No.
But, so what Peterson gets out of this is if we look at, say, mythologies of ancient civilizations,
Mhm.
we can see sort of recurring themes in stories across cultures,
Yeah.
right? And what he argues is that this was the way in which these civilizations tried to articulate social rules or guidelines, or just guidelines for how to live.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they try to articulate it, through these stories. Because similar to how the children can play together and observe each other's behavior and adopt the rules of the game, even though they can't articulate the rules of the game, the idea is that the civilization can observe the behavior of the heroes in these stories and extract some kind of rule for how to live life well.
Okay.
So that's sort of, in so many words, the idea of the metaphorical substrate.
Well, here's where I kind of
actually,
disconnect
here's
with that.
my problem.
What I would say is that yes, societies do, and have told stories to be able to relate moral and ethical quandaries and be able to talk about what we would do with that in the future, right?
Well,
but
I have a problem
our
even with
ethics,
that. But sorry.
thank you, Jamie. Our ethics change, right? We as a society continue to change. And as we change, we realize that some things are good, some things are bad, and we continue to evolve that way. And so when you talk about the underlying structure that people seem to follow when it comes to societies addressing moral issues, you find that we have these really strange hangers-on. We have these very interesting ideas that take a while until we have the wherewithal to question our environment. And so while you can say, yes, there is this thing, right? We can describe it. We can describe how those stories continue to move forward, right? All we have to do is look at our laws, because that is codifying or trying to codify our morality. I think that when you're looking at those things, that is tacit. You are looking at that tacitly and going, okay, what can we gain from that? What is to be gleaned? But is there a greater truth to it? Can we extract a greater truth from those things? Or is that something that we can rely on to be able to determine true things about the world that we're in? No, because that's reserved for exploration. That's reserved for us looking into it. And once we look into it, we describe it and we're able to test it and those kinds of things. That's how we get to knowledge. And so while you are implementing, while you're looking at that metaphorical substrate that a lot of our society is built on, you need to keep in mind that that is not a good source of reliable knowledge. And so when you plant things on that, it's shaky ground to begin with.
Well, so I'd like to return the subject of the question in the one part to this in any way relating that criticism of Jordan Peterson is unfair. In response to your statement, I don't have a criticism of what you said. I have a criticism of the fact that Jordan Peterson has a phrase and has lectures and has failed to communicate any of the things that you just communicated, generally. If you're not in his classroom studying and attempting to interpret his unclear, failed communication, I'm not even persuaded that he has thoughts on the level that you just did. I'm impressed. Well, I would find your level of reasoning generally impressive. And I know that I can have this conversation, the conversation that we're about to have, with you. I don't know that I can have it on any intelligible level with Jordan Peterson because he continues to fail to communicate the kinds of things that you just communicated. That is my criticism of Jordan Peterson, is that he fails to do the thing that he implicitly tries to do. He fails to communicate, he fails to be professor, he fails to teach effectively. You have succeeded in learning. That doesn't mean that he's succeeded in teaching. In direct criticism to the idea that there is a metaphysical or metaphorical substrate on which society is built, no, I don't think that that comes wholly from legends and myths that Jordan Peterson says are super great. I think that there's something either literally or metaphorically that can be drawn about Jordan Peterson's ability to think clearly from the fact that he slips back and forth between saying the word metaphorical and metaphysical, because I think that he has a very, very loose, if any, idea of what forms reality at all. So, sorry, if you want to talk more directly about Jordan Peterson and my criticism of him, we can do that, or we can have the more interesting conversation about
no, because
underlying ideas about.
You said something very interesting just then, is that you think that you can have this reason.
I mean, I don't know whether I can.
Me, but not with Jordan Peterson or something to that effect.
I said that I don't know that I can. It's quite possible that I'd find a way of doing that.
So that's interesting because everything I just said is basically my retelling of what I heard Jordan Peterson say in his lectures.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've
so
heard,
just a second, because like I said, I'm not going to pretend that everything Peterson does or said is gospel or anything.
You've called the right show.
Yeah. So I think it's very, very easy to, nevertheless, it's very easy to misunderstand him, or I guess for lack of a better term, misunderstand him if you come to him via the sort of Reddit fan base angle. I do agree with what you said on the show, that he does pander to his audience a lot. I would agree with that. I would recommend that if you have the time, you watch his lectures on his YouTube channel from before the whole Bill C-16 thing made him sort of quasi-famous.
Why? What do we have to gain from it?
Because he genuinely is a lot less preachy in those lectures. I think the whole Bill C-16 thing got to his head a little, and because remember, originally what got him sort of famous was a video that he uploaded to YouTube, which he recorded at like 2 a.m. in the morning or something like that, where he was just basically thinking out loud about the implications of Bill C-16. And that's kind of how his internet fame started.
Yeah. And so let's be clear, right? If somebody online says, I think the thought police are going to come and arrest me, or I'm going to lose my job because I refuse to use, trans requested pronouns, right? I don't know, man. I would just stop listening to that person. I mean, you have to decide what you're going to do with your time, right? I mean, no.
Yeah, I mean, to be
there are
clear,
a lot of really smart people out there, and a lot of those smart people don't say shit like that, right? So if you want to base it on that first blush, he's really not drawing me in. But if we're interacting with him in the future, right? If we're interacting with other things that he's saying, then I'll take them a piece at a time. Now,
what I'm trying to say is, if you wake up one morning and half asleep record yourself thinking out loud, and that gets you famous and that gets you an internet following,
and I misinterpreted a law, I would apologize for misinterpreting the law in a later video.
Also, wake me up at 2 in the morning, any morning, and I'm not going to say anti-trans bullshit, am I? You can try. We can do this. We can play this game, and you're going to wake me up, and I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
Right? How about you, Jamie? If I wake you up at 2 in the morning, you think you can...
You're going to fail to wake me up at 2 in the morning, because usually I'm still awake.
Up, yeah.
No. So what I'm trying to get at is...
Sorry, Chase. That was...
If that by some happenstance manages to get you an internet following, you wouldn't be correct for it, but you might believe that basically everything you say is awesome, and you somehow tapped into some great truth.
Yeah.
Which, again, I totally agree with you that if that's what he thinks, then that's BS. But I'm just trying to point out that I think that's where a sort of transition in his thinking happened. I think if you watch some of his lectures from before that, he's a lot less preachy. He doesn't try to tie everything into postmodern criticism of postmodernism and that sort of stuff. And
now, if he wants to call in and talk about those things, we'd be happy to. I mean, I think one thing that I'd like to point out to you, Chase, is Talk Heathen is a format where we will take honest propositions, right? People will come to us, and it doesn't matter how outlandish it is. We're going to try and walk those things through so that people who are watching can see why some of those, propositions are fallacious. Outside of Talk Heathen, we're other people, right? I do have a sense of humor, and when I want to mock a public figure, I'm not going to do that on this show because this isn't the show for it, right? This show is for honestly giving a good example of what it means to be able to criticize something and what it means to be able to look for good evidence. Outside of that, we were having fun. I mean,
sure, yes.
I've seen people mocking me, and that's great. That's great. It's fine. I don't think I'm hurting his feelings. I don't think we hurt his feelings. And if we hurt his feelings, he can call us and we can work it out. But
no.
On Talk Heathen, we'll address those issues one at a time. The question is how many of those issues do you want to present on his behalf versus maybe waiting for him to call in and then we can address them, you know?
The number is right here.
Like I said, I'm not trying to sort of white knight for Peterson here. I'm just saying that
fair.
If you want to make fun of Peterson, that's fine. But
it is kind of low-hanging fruit.
If you're going to make fun of someone, I think maybe this is sounding really pretentious.
Deepak Chopra.
But just try to make fun of them for the right reasons.
I don't know about that. If you sound
Also,
like Kermit, I'm not going to do that on the air anymore. I apologized for that, but man, that was funny.
It was funny, yeah.
Call it lowbrow, that's fine, but every once in a while I laugh at a fart joke too, and I'm not going to apologize publicly for it. I'll make sure that the venue's the right one, you know?
I'm not even talking about lowbrow humor. I'm just talking about making fun of someone on completely fictional basis. Like if I said, ha, look at that Matt Dillahunty guy, he always dresses up in drag on his show and he never explains why slavery is wrong.
You should call him about it. Well, he's got a thick skin. He's fine.
Yeah.
He's a big boy too.
He's going to be a lot less polite.
Yeah, but
No,
I mean...
I'm just saying those are factual,
he may say the
correct things to level criticism or jokes at him.
I joked about him sounding like Kermit the Frog. What other jokes do you mean? Like, it did sound like word salad, and when we tried to compare them against actual quotes and actual word salad, well, I failed pretty hard a couple times, and so did Jamie.
I'm not disagreeing with you that some of the things he says is taken out of context, is complete word salad. I'm just letting you know, because I don't know if you're aware, that there are actual, I think, interesting arguments behind those, and it's not just not just him pulling sort of
Deepak Chopra
deepities out of thin air. There is, although sometimes it sounds like that, there are interesting arguments worth at least listening to and considering behind those. And you won't find those arguments in like his Reddit Q&A videos or his interviews. Those arguments you'll find in his lectures, and especially, I think, in his earlier lectures.
Chase, we have somebody else who wants to hop in on the line and say hi. So if you're okay with that, we're going to bring one more person in on this call. Is that all right?
Yes, that's
Let's
fine.
do this. Mr. Atheist, how's it going?
Hello, and Chase, hello to you, first of all. I've been listening to your call, and I'm very much very thoughtful about the things that you're saying. So first thing I want to tell you is I don't think there are probably many Jordan Peterson fans who have consumed as many of his lectures as I have. Now, the episode that you are referring to was on my channel. I'm Mr. Atheist. I hosted that game. I've been enjoying reading the comments for people who are taking his philosophical views. It's pretty surprising how hateful they can be, but I'll do whatever comments are fine because they all help the algorithm get to the channel. But what I want to say in response to the things you're saying is ridicule and satire are both extremely valid forms of criticism. And it is the case that unless you package things in a way to reach broader audiences, you won't. And what is important here is you have a man, Jordan Peterson, who is seducing a large number of people who would label themselves as intellectuals and may be so, by taking very simple concepts, speaking definitively to them, and then adding a lot of nonsense afterwards to justify it. But it sounds so good and in a way that anybody with these terrible ideas can attach themselves to it and now have an advanced vocabulary to do so and can articulate it in a more advanced way. But these are harmful things. In regards to the context, we didn't do it every time, but we did talk about the context of the quote as we were going through. But do know where I am, I have to deal with people all the time throwing these arguments at me and telling me how this individual whose views on the trans population haven't evolved at all since he went to school in the 80s, even though that science has evolved. I am hearing them repeat line after line and coming with malice toward people I care very much about. So while you seem like a very nice guy, excuse me if I don't care about any lecture you have to give on why we need to be coming at this a little more sensitive. The man is said to speak very deliberately, and yet all I hear is how deliberate and clear he is, but then he needs a million lines of context for everything he says.
Yeah, to be very clear, just to everyone in this four-way, I don't think that Chase was calling in to defend Peterson generally or entirely dismiss our criticism of him. I think he was just calling in to try and get a little bit more nuance. That being said, Chase, Mr. Atheist's comments were still directed at you.
Yes, and I basically agree with all of it. I mean, when Peterson does have a tendency to do all that stuff that Mr. Atheist just described, although I'm not entirely sure how much of that is actually just misinterpretation of his points by his fan base. There's a certain degree of that going on.
Right. So here's what I see, Chase. It could be the case that Peterson is actually a very reasonable guy, and I'm just missing it because I'm getting all the context from his fans. However, what seems simpler in the case is, as I watch him and consume him, he is extremely aware of the audience he is in front of, and he always speaks differently to those audiences. So when he's talking to somebody like H3H3, which is a liberal agnostic guy who has those more liberal points of views, or when he's on a debate stage with Matt Dillahunty, he tries to be agreeable with everyone there. But then when he's in front of people who already agree with some of the stronger statements he's made on, say, trans issues, he doesn't seem to mix words there, and he doesn't mind being more deliberate to the point of dishonesty, because that law that he often refers to has gone under tons of legal analysis, and the way he represents it, as though it is possible you would see legal trouble for misgendering somebody, is not true. It is not trying to mandate pronouns. It is adding a class of people, or it is adding a population of people to a protected class, and he is misrepresenting it, and he became an overnight sensation, and he is just taking that and living off of it. He is, I think, a leech. Now, I do get what
it
you're
has
saying
made him
about
a
the
butt
context
ton of
add
money.
more. Oh yeah, and I will tell you, I am going to be doing more in-depth criticizing specific things he said on my channel, but I'm not going to basically make my channel people attacked me recently for not being neutral about Mormons. I'm an ex-Mormon. I know the crap that they do. I'm not going to be unbiased. I'm going to present with both cases the way I see it and the things that I think are being missed. So while I totally appreciate what you're saying, the channel that can present Jordan Peterson's side for him is his channel, and the thousands of other people who, which, I mean, his fan base is millions, but as far as YouTubers go, a large population of people who agree with him. Those are the guys to go to if you want to see his side.
See, that's kind of what I'm saying, is that there's a sort of very binary thinking here. You're either on Peterson's side or you're not.
Well, I think that that's not entirely our fault. I mean, to be clear, that's the way that, quote unquote, his quote unquote fan base has acted. I mean, getting around to things more directly related to what the show is designed to combat, the way that he has whipped up a fan base, talked entire nonsense, and then thrown out a couple of interesting ideas reminds me exactly of the way that politically charged and minded creationists do precisely the same thing. Let's have weird traditional values, talk a bunch of nonsense, get people to devote themselves to it, and then give me their money. What is the difference?
And I'm not trying to defend that practice here.
Cool.
We are all agreed that that practice is bold.
Then that said,
Yes.
I think we've given about a half hour to Jordan Peterson. I think I'm ready to get into some
and for the
religious
record,
stuff.
Chase, you seem like a very nice guy. Could I just do one more thing with the three of you here? It'll take less than a minute, just for just to end it on a lighter note.
Go for it. Shoot. You got a minute.
Okay. I came across this quote, and it is this: "The key to life gives rise to positive truth." And I would like to ask the three of you, did Jordan Peterson say that, or was it a Jordan Peterson wisdom generator?
And for that response and for that answer, you can go to Mr. Atheist's channel. I don't want you to.
He's
let's do it.
gonna tweet
The
it out.
cliffhanger.
Later, Jimmy.
Take care, everybody.